Hello everyone, this is Yamna studying second BSc at Spaces Degree College. Now I want to explain ER model. The term ER stands for Entity Relationship Model, a graphical tool which represents the entities, attributes, and relationship pictorially. The building blocks of ER diagram are entity sets, attributes, and relationships. Entity sets. An entity is an object in the real world. An entity is anything like a person, place, or a thing. An entity is represented by a rectangle containing the entity's name. The entity name is known, which is usually written in the capital letters. A collection of entities known as entity set or entity type. Each row in the ER model is known as entity instance or entity occurrence. There are three types of entities: strong entity, weak entity, associative entity, or composite entity, bridge entity. Strong entities. A strong entity is an entity that exists independently of other entity type. Strong entity has always a unique characteristic called an identifier. It is represented by single line rectangle. Weak entity. A weak entity is an entity whose existence depends on some other entity type. It has a primary key that is practically or totally derived from the parent entity in the relationship. It is represented by double line rectangle. Associative entity. An associative entity is an entity type that associates the intents of one or more entity types. It implements many-to-many relationship between two or more entities. It is also called composite entity or bridge entity. It is represented by a diamond shape within a rectangle. Attributes. An attribute is a property or characteristic of an entity. Attribute represented by oval or ellipse and are connected to the entity. Classification of attribute: simple attribute, composite attribute, optional and required attribute, multi-valid attribute, derived attribute, null attribute, and last one is identifier. Simple attribute. A simple attribute is an attribute that cannot be subdivided. Example: age, sex, and marital status. Composite attribute. A composite attribute is an attribute that can be further subdivided into simpler required and optional attribute. A required attribute is an attribute that must have a values. It cannot be left. A optional attribute is an attribute does not require a value. It can be left empty. Single valid attribute. A single valid attribute is an attribute that can have only a single value. For example, a ATM card have only one PIN number. Multi-valid attribute. An attribute that can hold multi-values is known as multi-valid attribute. It is represented with double oval in an ear diagram. Derived attribute. An derived attribute is an attribute whose values is calculated from other attribute. The derived attribute need not be physically stored within the database. Derived attribute is represented using an ellipse with a dashed line. Null attribute. In some cases, a particular entity may not have any value for an attribute. For this, we use a special value called null value. It contains unknown and not accountable values. Identifier. It is an attribute that can uniquely identifies each entity, instance, or row. It is represented by. Thank you for watching my video.